Hi, I'm Louise Mowbray, founder of Mowbray by Design and your host. Welcome to Lift, my conscious leadership podcast, Lead into the Future, today. I'm on a mission to bring you powerful insights and very human stories from leaders and entrepreneurs who are each, in their own way, contributing something noteworthy to shaping our world of work. Conscious conversations with people who are being conscious leaders and doing conscious business. My aim is to give you a personal lift to inspire you in your day-to-day business life. Make sure you subscribe now to never miss an episode. Today I'm talking to Nicole Martin, who is an organisational psychologist and entrepreneur with over 25 years international experience. Nicole has lived and worked in the UK, the US and South Africa, with loads of travel in between. Today, she's a director of Lumina Learning Global and a founding partner of the Growth Project UK, which was launched at the Shard in London last week. I wanted to find out more about her passion for Lumina Learning, her career, her inspiring approach to life, and what the Growth Project is all about. Nicole, thank you so much for joining me today. It's an absolute pleasure to be talking to you.
Oh, thank you, Louise. The feelings are completely mutual in all respects of everything that you do. So thanks for our time together.
That is definitely mutual. Nicole, I'd love to go back a little because you and I met. You were in South Africa in December last year and instantly just was so attracted to what you're doing and this extraordinary, fabulous energy that you have. And what's really struck me about Lumina is how of today this organization is in comparison to anything I've seen from a fabulous platform and app where you can actually measure your own snapshot of your own persona against other people, to the disruptive nature of the language and the reporting and how it actually views the whole person and in such a positive light and really respects each individual. But just moving away from Lumina for a moment and moving on to you, that's the very essence of what struck me about you in the very first place. And I seem to remember us having a coffee in Cape Town in January and not talking a great deal about business, but talking about all things life, talking about yoga and spirituality and our connection to the universe and other people. And clearly, this is a really strong driver for you. Where does this come from? Has this always been there? Is it something that you've cultivated over the years? Or tell me a little bit more.
So thank you for that question. It's a beautiful question that I recheck in many moments during the day. But ultimately, I'm really committed to making a difference in this world. And I feel so grateful meeting people like yourself and being around a lot of the organizational development colleagues who, we all speak the same language. And it's really about how can we increase humanity? How can we wake people up to the humanity within us? Because what happens through all the organizations that we touch so often, it's so easy to be so profit-driven and commercially driven and performance. And there's a part of me that also loves that part. As an organizational psychologist, I'm passionate about research. I love proving ROI, return on investment, and I look for all those metrics because I believe in this work and I believe it can impact the bottom line and profitability. But ultimately, it's about waking people up at the individual, team, and organizational level to purpose. And on that note, I've just launched a new charity called the Growth Project in the UK. So it's been running in Australia for 5 years, and myself and my colleague Paul Friedman have launched it in the UK just last week at the Shard. Phenomenal success. And our ultimate purpose is to see how can we blur the lines between business for profit and business for purpose. And the way we're doing that is through partnering charity and business leaders on a leadership development journey to, working with people who are open to thinking differently. But there are many levels of engagement that I think it's a longer story. But what I try and do is both through my business element, through Lumina Learning, which I find is, again, individual, team, organizational level, it's waking people up to connect with who am I, at different levels. The charity is my charitable giving time I hope at a broader organizational level. But if I go back to Lumina, what we're doing is saying, let's relook at the way that I perceive the world. All our work is based on that beautiful Viktor Frankl quote, which means so much to me and inspires me, which is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is my power to choose my response. In my response lies my growth and my freedom.
Yes.
So for me, everything is about the space. What could happen if people can acknowledge that space exists? And then how can we enable people to access that space and then do something powerfully with that space? And sometimes the response could be silence, nothing. But as long as it's not that unconscious reaction that derails one's own behavior, that then derails relationships, but makes people come from me instead of from you. So in our work, we talk a lot about mountaintops. It's about really traveling up other people. How do they see the world? Where are they coming from? And recognizing, we think it's often about the other when there's a problem or a challenge, but it's fundamentally always about ourselves.
Right.
Who am I? How do I see the world? How, what are my thoughts and my feelings? And so what we're trying to do is in that space, get people to become really accountable for my thoughts, which creates my feelings, which has an impact then on my behavior, on my success, on my performance, on my relationships, on my well-being. And when people can understand that they're accountable and responsible at every single level for the outcome of their lives, they can start taking back the different pieces and then recreating their life and becoming the real author of their book. So I'm completely passionate about that. And it's very personal as well. I'm married to my psychological opposite. Right. So my wonderful husband, Alan, is, on our system, he's my, complete opposite. So if we take the 72 kind of qualities down to 24 to 8 aspects of 4 colors, just for simplicity, the blue qualities are all around being processed and evidence-based. And he's 100% blue, 0 yellow, which is about the creative, spontaneous, sociable.
Big picture thinking.
Big picture, which I'm very high on. And his portrait actually says he's claimed no qualities on the yellow and 100% on the blue. And, we've been married coming up to our 29th anniversary. And it's been a really interesting journey because it's constant adaptation to recognize his need for order and structure, which is so completely different to my way of being and thinking and operating. It can lead to huge frustrations on both sides. And it's really about understanding the depth of that difference and the impact of that, and then how to adapt our own behaviors so that we can connect. So I'm passionate about relationships and getting people to understand that someone who's different, and often is our partner, they're not doing or saying things to trigger you or to be hurtful. It's just they're trying to do that to survive and succeed in their world. That's their way of being and seeing and perceiving. And once we really get that, we can release our own emotional triggers, and we're really able to adapt and compensate to see. And another big part of the way or the messaging within the work I do is to try and get people to go beyond the language and sometimes even the tone, because people don't often say or do what they mean. Right. They're just trying they're trying to convey themselves in the best way they can. And I think what we need to do is look for the essence. Where is that other person coming from? What do they really need or want right now? And then sometimes if a tone or words that are unfriendly or unhelpful are being used, we can cut through that and connect to what does that person need from me right now? Where are they coming from? And how can I go towards that? So that's kind of a passion about relationships. The other big driver for me personally is through my brother, Sasha Sorrell, who's my hero and my other kind of soulmate. And he had a business called Realize Partners, and he was passionate about purpose and waking people up to that and helping people fulfill their purpose and being more value driven.
Yeah.
A lot of his work was around gratitude, but he went from the more spiritual gratitude, purpose driven spiritual leader to be this bigger contributor to kind of a social contribution and global consciousness. But he was also very pedantic around the detail. He did a lot of the KPI work and processes within organizations. And he suffered with a mental illness, bipolar, which was a huge derailer for him. Right. And, whenever he would do amazing work and then he would self-sabotage through the illness. And 2 years ago now, he took his life because he couldn't cope with his lack of ability to fulfill what he knew was possible in himself, because he'd enable other people, but he could constantly seeing the pattern. He actually said, "This is enough." He couldn't reconcile. There's lots of things
the space he said between.
He couldn't. Yeah, exactly. That space between. Thank you for saying that, because he knew how he wanted to show up, and sometimes he just couldn't show up that way. So he was so brilliant and so articulate. So part of the work I'm doing, particularly in the Growth Project, and he's developed so many beautiful models, which he kind of half wrote. He wrote a book before he passed away. It needs some finishing and pulling together. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. But it ultimately is about purpose-driven organizations and leaders. And I would love to bring his messaging out with his intention, because I believe that's a core part of his legacy.
Yeah, it's quite. I'm always so grateful to be having these types of conversations with people like you, where the real essence of who we are as people is explored without fear and without boundary. And without a doubt, we all have so much to give and to learn from each other. And yet often, certainly in our business and societal setups, we're almost pitched against one another, a zero-sum game, where, there is one pie, there's one way forward, and if you don't get your share of it, there's very little left for anyone else. And yet, as both you and I know, and certainly listening to you today, being able to actually expand. I mean, there's an exponential expansiveness in this way of living, in this way of working. And certainly I'm very much looking forward to reading that book. And what a way to honour your brother. That's extraordinary, Nicole. Well, you'll have to let me know when it's ready to go, and we can talk about that at the time. And just to let everybody know that I will be posting links to various different topics that we talk about, so that you can get hold of Nicole and certainly tap into the Growth Project and have a look and see what they're up to, what she is up to there. Nicole, this journey isn't new for you. I mean, you started as in industrial organizational psychology. What was that sort of theme has obviously run its way all the way through. And I know that you brought insights to South Africa. I think it was in 1999. Another tool in terms of this market. Where did all of that originate from? Just going back, you grew up in the UK.
Yes, going back. So I did my master's. I did a couple of postgraduate degrees, and I think I was, at a young age after your degree, you're often going in different paths and trying to understand who you are and what you want. And I think I was kind of led by a very inspiring mentor, Professor Clive Fletcher. And I started off doing work with him, actually with personality tools and working in his company. And I just became really engaged in the conversations that he was having and how that was accessing information quite quickly. He was able to get to a level of depth with individuals that I thought at the time would have taken quite a lot of conversations before he could get to that. And it kind of gives you permission. So I became engaged around the psychometrics way back when. And then I worked at several corporates, EDS. I worked in the US for a few years, aerial communications.
Right.
Really looking at doing OD consulting work to help organizations leverage their people for better results. And then I came across Insights through a Scottish connection, and then brought that to South Africa and started building up a business. And I suppose what I liked about it is my research in my master's degree was looking at the impact of high performers, and I used call centers as the environment because there was lots of data to capture. But why was it that some people were more successful than others?
Right.
And there were some recurring themes. I did the same research in the UK, in the States, and South Africa. And there was clearly a personality aspect to that, a team cohesion. There was a recognition aspect to it. There were different parts that I became really engaged with, that I wanted to explore further. So I think that was some of my initial inspirations. And then Insights was a way of pulling it together. And I think I am naturally an entrepreneurial creature. Comes from my grandmother. And I enjoy building business. So I worked very hard in building the Insights business, and really enjoyed that, had lots of value, and until I sold that business to Connemara, because I was looking for something different. I think it was around adding another level of complexity to understand human beings. So it was still, I love kind of where I came from with those Insights Color Days. So we've kind of integrated some of that, but this tool was created with a whole different mindset, based on the Big Five personality theory,
Right.
Accessing core strengths, derailers, but celebrating the strengths. Where am I derailing myself? Owning that. But it gave me the freedom to use language that I feel passionate and true to. And I really wanted to create something. Stuart Desson was the creator, but when I joined him, what attracted me was around ensuring that I was going beyond the stereotyping and labeling. And you mentioned that beautiful word about expansiveness, like the journey. And we call it a portrait, the snapshot now, which could shift and change. And then, with Lumina, we go beyond. So we've got this strong academic base. We have a strong team. Stuart's done his PhD in evaluative bias, which has been fascinating and driven a lot of our research. Yes. And we've got a team. We're constantly reviewing, norming, doing our reliabilities, validity. So I'm still very stimulated by my statistical days and the research elements, and I've been able to do some really fascinating research with Lumina. But what I was also excited about was the whole innovative piece.
Yes.
So, we have the Splash app, we've got the Team Viewer, which is a very dynamic way of moving from the individual to the team. We're launching now our digital coach, which is
that I'm very excited by.
It's brilliant. It is so exciting. I mean, again, a key messaging for us is about sustainability. So yes, wake people up, but then how do you hold them and support them on a lifelong journey of growth?
Yeah.
Because also once we've developed an area, we're then at a different level of perception. We then want to work on the next area. And we realize within companies, it's so hard for them from a resource perspective to continuously support and ensure that once people have had a paradigm shift, you can never go back. Once they have that new awareness, they're different. They shift, they do shift immediately. But how can we support deeper levels of growth?
Right.
So what we aim to do is have many levels of touching all of our practitioners, users, anyone who works with us, so that the growth is continuous. And we believe, a lot of these digital innovative kind of apps and systems will support that journey. So there are many different things happening, and I love being part of those conversations and supporting that. So every kind of, I'd say, definitely every year there are new products coming up. We've got a lot in the pipeline, even this year, that we're going to be releasing.
Yes, and of course the Sparking Up Your Innovation model, yes, which has just been released, although delivered already in Kuwait.
Yes. Yes, so that's a fantastic program. So we've got the kind of the depth with the academics and nuance, but then we also like to bring it to a level of simplicity and practicality. So Sparking Up Your Innovation is an example of how to take both the simplicity and the depth together to enact real, easy, sustainable shift and change. Because as you know better than me, the need for the innovative mindset, not that you have to be someone who's highly big picture thinking. There's different ways of activating that.
Yes.
But definitely around to ensure the processes today at every level of leadership or responsibility is seeing how can we do things differently and better, and having that kind of that broader mindset. So that's a great example of a process that can quite simply steer people through a process of how to enact great innovation within organizations. So there are many such programs like that we're working and developing.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the case studies that really appealed to me was the Mexican university, I forget their name right now, who've put 40,000 people and, of course, all their faculty through the Lumina Sparks so that people are better able to choose their courses and the direction that they want to head in terms of education, that are better suited to who they actually are. And just going back, I can imagine that at that point, if somebody had given me that type of guidance and insight, I might have made some different choices. I think we always land up where we need to be, although sometimes via a long and winding route.
Absolutely.
So I definitely would have benefited from that. So that the applications for this are deep and wide, and I think that is the flexibility and disruptive nature of the thinking behind it is definitely hugely appealing.
Yeah, there's a huge passion for Lumina on those two fronts that you've kind of just connected to briefly, but around the education. For example, I know in the Netherlands, 90% of their work is actually from at the school level all the way to the university level. Right. In South Africa, we've got a number of practitioners that we support around focusing on disadvantaged communities and principles to enable their greater effectiveness. And certainly, we will support any charity in terms of the Lumina process, and they will, providing the portraits, and with our range of practitioners, there's many who are willing to support processes through coaching and running workshops. So fundamentally, we want to make a difference, and how do we do that? And we're not going to create barriers or blockages around people who can't afford it. We will always find a way. If there's anything that's going to help make a difference, we want to support and be on that journey. Yeah. So the Growth Project, which I brought to the UK this year, in 2021, we're going to be launching it in South Africa so that we can really support not just ad hoc charities, which is what we're doing now, but in a very cohesive way systemic, to really, a more systemic way to make a difference there.
Yeah, so vitally necessary. It's wonderful. I'm really looking forward to learning so much more about it. Nicole, it's been an absolute delight talking to you today. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing a really clear and inspiring passion and purpose with us. And I wish you all the very best with the Growth Project. And certainly you and I will be connecting again, I would imagine within a few short days.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks, Louise. Take care.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Lift. I'm delighted you're here. If you'd like to connect with Nicole, head over to my website, mowbraybydesign.com/podcast, where you'll find the show notes and relevant links. Whilst you're there, don't forget to subscribe to the show in iTunes or any of your favorite platforms to never miss an episode. And if you're loving Lift, I'd really appreciate a rating in iTunes or simply share with a friend who needs a lift. You can get in touch with me for coaching or speaking engagements by sending an email to louise@mowbraybydesign.com or click on the contact button on my site. Until next time, lift yourself, lift another.